Hey everybody, welcome back to Diesel Creek. My name's Matt. Behind me, my 1964 Caterpillar D8H bulldozer. Now, I rescued this bulldozer back over the winter time. We got this thing out of a field where it had been sitting for approximately 15 years. The company I bought it from, Stravaggi Industries, had bought it new back in 1964, and they used it extensively in stripping for coal and various other activities that the company was involved in back over the years. I'm not sure exactly when this machine fell out of use, but it got parked in a field somewhere around the time I was in high school, and it sat there ever since until we were able to save this thing last year. Now, if you haven't seen the previous videos on this machine, it was a really fun rescue. You're going to want to go ahead and check those videos out. There is a link down in the description to those. If you're all caught up on this series, you'll know that in the last video, we swapped out pony engines and we were able to get this thing fired back up for the first time since I brought it home here. And we quickly discovered that the turbo was going out of it. Unless you had this thing revved up, the turbo inside was actually hitting the housing of the turbo. So that's very bad. You can have that turbo essentially just grenade itself and then get sucked through the engine. So we don't want that to happen. This thing actually runs pretty good. So I'm really excited to get this machine back into working condition. The first thing we need to tackle is that turbo. And of course, we need to do a complete service on the engine, transmission, the pony engine, and the gearbox behind it. And may even get into some other stuff along the way. I'm sure I'm going to find some other things that are needing attention before we can go playing in the dirt. So with all that being said, let's jump into this thing. So this is your basic turbo setup. Exhaust gases come out of the engine and spin up the turbine side, which go ahead over here. There's a through shaft and then another wheel over here, and that is your compressor side that sucks air from the intake right here, compresses it, and pushes forced air down into the intake. Basically, that forced air increases efficiency and creates extra horsepower. So to get this turbo off of here, it looks like we're going to have to do a few things. First of which, we got an oil line coming up here. We got the intake side. We're going to have to pop that thing off of there. There's going to be O-rings that seal on there and there. Over here we have the exhaust pedestal. We're going to have to, well, I'd say unbolt, but there's absolutely no way that any of those bolts are going to come loose. So we'll just get the old gas axe out and go right to work with the gas axe and cut those bolts right off of there. Ta-da! Yeah, that's probably not good. All right, well, I'm quite certain that that is the extent of the bolts that we're going to be able to remove from this thing. Next step, torch 8 bolts off of these things. All right, we got all those bolts torched off of there. Let's see how easy or hard this thing's going to be to get off. I have a feeling she's still pretty welded. There we go. That's a big honky tonkin' turbo right there. Oh, look at that. We just got this turbocharger back from Area Diesel Service, and I am super excited to open this thing up, check it out, and get it put on the machine. Before I forget, they made a complete video of going through this turbo and repairing it for me, and if you're interested in how they did that, and I guess it was pretty bad from what I understand, but if you're interested in seeing how they did that, the link to their channel and the video on this turbocharger is down in the description. Be sure you head over there and check that out. Perfect. So like I said, they completely covered the repair of this turbo over on their YouTube channel, so please head on over there and check them out. I don't know what this stuff is called, but this is exactly what I wanted when I was trying to package this turbo. And I didn't have any, so I basically just packed the whole thing with cardboard and peanuts. And luckily it made it there in, well, most of one piece. Those guys are professionals and they have the proper gear to ship this thing though. Oh man, she is heavy. When I shipped it out to Area Diesel Service, the package weighed like 91 pounds or something. This is a honky-tonkin' turbo right here. This sucker is heavy. But look how pretty, huh? She's a beaut, Clark. Oh, yeah. Oh, it turns so buttery smooth now. Oh, check this out. That is awesome. This guy's got that ID tag laser etched with my logo on it, and that is sweet. It's the little details like that that make you really like a company. I'm super excited to have this thing back, and I cannot wait to get it installed on the machine. But first, there's some other things that we should attend to before we get this back in position. It's kind of going to be helpful to have it out of the way to do what we need to do up here. So when you're running a big machine like this, there is a lot of things that you should be paying attention to and keeping an eye on so you don't do any damage to the machine. AKA, there's just a bunch of gauges you need to keep an eye on. So all of our gauges, as you can see here, are pretty well destroyed. This machine sat near a soccer field for a number of years, and apparently kids got on it and vandalized it and smashed out all the gauges. Now the only one that was sort of working was the oil pressure gauge, engine oil pressure. It would come up, you could still see the needle was moving. However, how much you can trust that gauge now, since the glass is all busted out and everything, I do not know. But we were kind of reading on the low side of oil pressure. So starting at the top, we have a water temp gauge, we have an amp meter, we have fuel pressure, we have water pressure, we have engine oil pressure, we have converter oil pressure, we have converter oil temp, and then we have some sort of other water temp. I don't know why there's two water temp gauges. So the same fine gentleman that donated the pony engine to this project, also when I was up there getting the pony engines, they donated this dash from a D9, and a lot of the gauges are the same as what we need. So I already pilfered them out of here. We got, what, 4 of them laying there. I think I have another one up on the machine already. We got to get these things installed. The trouble is, up here on our machine, the wiring is a mess back here. Now, some of these gauges don't really matter. They have actual hoses and lines going to them for like the pressures. But there's like a headlight switch over here in this corner, and the wiring is, oh, it's very frazzled. I don't know how well you guys can see. There's some shadows going on, but the wiring is not good. Same thing with our amp meter gauge. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that's probably not going to work for right now, and that's not going to be a problem. I'm not really worried about charging the battery on this thing. It doesn't take much battery juice to get the pony going usually. I'm also not going to worry about the wiring right now because eventually it's going to get completely redone. I really want to restore this tractor and do a nice job on it one of these days, but before we go start and tearing into it and do a full restoration, we need to work it and make sure there's no mechanical deficiencies, like the transmission isn't going to give out on us or the engine isn't going to overheat and have problems, because since I've got this thing going, I haven't done anything with it other than track it around a little bit. So we need to make sure that it can prove itself before we sink that kind of time and effort into it. Out with the old, in with the new. New used, I should say. All right, well, that's one down, like 5 to go. So I will bring you guys back when this is done, because it's a pretty boring, tedious process to watch, I'd imagine. Alright, so in talking to Curtis over at Area Diesel Service, he said that it most likely looked like this turbo had failed due to oil contamination. Now, we haven't really run this thing long enough that even with bad oil, we would not have been the ones that tore up that turbo. Likely, that turbo had been going out for quite some time, and any oil contamination was long ago, but we're still not going to risk firing up a brand new rebuilt turbo with the oil that's in this engine. Unfortunately, that means we cannot get this engine good and hot before draining it, which I would really much prefer to do. I guess, if anything, hindsight being 2020, I should have drained it as soon as we pulled this thing in here before we even yanked the turbo off. So right now, we are going to go ahead and get started draining this oil out so that we don't risk introducing any contamination into the new turbo. We've got 2 oil filters right there on the side of the block, and hopefully we can get to the oil drain on the bottom without fighting the belly pan too much. All right. That looks like our oil drain right there through that little cutout, which is convenient. Sometimes you'll have like a little trap door to unbolt. Sort of like these panels right here. What do we got here? That one looks like our transmission drain hidden up in there. I have the proper Caterpillar wrench to fit these bungs. What I don't think I have is any way to turn them though, because you'll see when I show you the wrench here in a second These are deeper, like recessed into the pan. I don't think I'm going to be able to use that tool. All right, so this is your Caterpillar plug wrench. This gets out most plugs on machines. But as you can see in this application, not going to work. And if I fish it up through here, well, there's about 3 yards of dirt in the belly pan we got to combat. But even if I can get it up in here, then I would not be able to turn it anyway. So I think I've come up with a workaround here, which is fish it up inside the belly pan, get it in the plug, and then I can stick on this 15/16 on the outside and just break it loose. And usually once these plugs are just broken loose, that first little quarter turn, you can take them out by hand. Yep, just like I thought. I give it a little turn, the plug will turn by hand. So I gotta clean up this mountain of dirt that we knocked down here now, and then wheel our oil pan under here. Here we go. Well, since this oil wasn't good and hot like I would normally like it to be to do an oil change, and if you don't know the reason you'd want the oil hot is because it kind of loosens up all the sludge in the engine, if there is any, which usually a beast of this age definitely has some. But anyway, it loosens up all that sludge, and that way when you pull the drain plug, it theoretically gets the most out of the engine as possible. But since we can't do it that way on account of the turbo installation, I'm going to leave the plug out of this thing overnight and let it completely drain and drip and do everything it needs to, and hopefully we get most everything out of here. Even still, I think that this is going to be a short oil change interval. I'd say I'm only going to put maybe 100 hours on this oil before we change it again. Make sure we really get a good flush out of it, and then we'll have it heated up next time. Alright, that's had a chance to drip overnight. We can pop these filter canisters off of here now and change the elements. I got criticized the last time I did an oil change because I was using a crescent wrench to do all the oil change work. I have proper wrenches, but you see, great example right here. This canister somewhere over the years has gotten a different bolt head than this one. Just looking at the head, I would say that this one's probably original and this one's probably not. But rather than getting up and down off the machine 20 times because you come up here with the first size wrench and don't realize you need a second size wrench, it's awful nice just to carry a crescent wrench around. These should not be super tight. You're not going to round anything off or hurt anything using a crescent wrench. They invented these things because sometimes they're useful. Also, when you're working on old stuff like this, there's a good chance that sometimes the head has been damaged previously or rounded or rusted to the point where a standard size wrench doesn't even fit it anymore, and you're better off to have a crescent wrench because you can actually adjust it to the proper size and get a better grip on it than your standard size wrench. So, believe it or not, crescent wrenches are okay. Well, there's our filter. This is a Baldwin PT670. Got some actual kitty cat filters for this old girl. All right, time for some fresh oil. So we're gonna be reaching for the good stuff. As always, these big old diesels are definitely not cheap to rebuild. So you definitely don't wanna cheap out on your oil. You'd much rather spend a little bit of money on oil than a lot of bit of money rebuilding an engine. So, as you guys know, I use Rotella T5 in just about everything these days. I do that because I feel like you get a good blend of both conventional and synthetic oil properties. The old girl's gonna be thirsty. I think she holds close to 9 gallons. All right, last jug. All right, if my calculations are correct, we should be just about full right now. If I get to the dipstick somewhere around here. Oh yeah, we're reading over full now, which means we're reading over full at the moment, but we would have to be because the way you check the oil on these old Cats is you got to have the engine idling and you check it then. All right, so we got the oil all changed out in the big diesel here, but while we're at it, let's not forget we have a small engine right down on the side of our big diesel here. This is the Pony engine. For you guys that don't know, I've explained it a bunch of times in the past, but I still see comments of people asking what the deal with the Pony engine is. So basically, back in the day, they didn't have starters that were strong enough to turn over these big engines, especially in cold climates. It would just not spin it over fast enough, and you would also just plow through batteries back in the day. I think both the starter and battery technology has evolved quite a bit since the 60s, of course, and earlier. But basically, the Pony engine runs on gasoline because a little gasoline 2-cylinder engine is pretty easy to get going in the cold. So you'd start that thing up and engage the big engine with the Pony engine, and it would just start rotating the big engine, and that would build up your oil pressure, your fuel pressure, and the exhaust from the Pony engine runs through the intake. So you're preheating your intake air in the manifold, as well as circulating coolant through the Pony engine and heating the coolant. So you could pretty much get the entire diesel up to temp before you ever even started the diesel engine if you really wanted to. But you know, the other advantage is you can crank it over as long as you want. You're not plowing through batteries. So as long as you have enough gasoline, you can keep this thing turning over basically as long as you need to get it started, no matter how cold it is. So anyway, this is the Pony engine, and there's a gearbox behind it, which also has some oil in it that we need to drain out and put some fresh stuff in. Looky here, I discovered the engineers at Caterpillar were smart enough. They put a little pass-through through the frame rail so you could actually get a wrench, or a ratchet rather, onto that drain bolt. Ugh. That sucker was tight. Hopefully you guys can see what's going on here. I was able to wedge a couple cut out 1-quart oil bottles underneath the drain here and hopefully catch everything coming out there. Got the Pony engine draining now. There we go. Alright, so we don't even have a bottom cushion. There wasn't one when I got this tractor. The armrests are gutted, and so is the back of the seat. So I just went ahead and ordered a complete seat cushion assembly off of eBay. Let's go ahead and see if this thing installs. Oh man. Yeah, she's just in great shape. Aha. All right, well, we got our new cushions here. This is one of the armrests, and I don't know, the construction seems okay. It's definitely not a super high-end, top-of-the-line upholstery job or anything, but for the price point, you wouldn't expect that, I guess. The biggest thing that irritates me right off the bat, though, is they didn't use this same type of fasteners as the original OEM ones. So these are a metric M10 versus these are, I think, 3/8 fine thread that came out of these things. So it's a bit annoying. You got to get new hardware to put this on. But luckily, thanks to boltsandnuts.com, we do have our big bolt bin over there, and I do have the proper metric fasteners for these new armrests. It almost seems sacrilegious to be putting metric hardware on a piece of American history like this. Oh, and of course, the stinking bolts don't line up. They're not even close. The simple solution would be to just drill the holes to fit the cushions. I don't want to start drilling into this thing. I want to restore this thing, not put more holes in it. So, I don't know what we're going to do now. And I've had these things sitting here so long now, I doubt I can return them. I got 2 out of the 4 bolt holes lined up, and they're pretty sturdy for now. Just gonna run it like that, and then I guess when we go to restore this thing, I will either get the factory correct armrests or drill the seat mounts to fit and then weld up the other holes. All right, I was able to switch these metal brackets to the new seat back cushion. I don't have the proper taper bolts in metric that they used in here. Those are pretty specialty items. So I put the regular hex head bolts in there. Hopefully we have the clearance for them. I think we do. I also hope that we have the spacing right on these brackets. That looks pretty good. Oh, yeah. The seat back leaves a little to be desired. The old back was, you know, a spring back like a typical upholstery job. This thing is just a solid brick of foam. It's not exactly comfortable. It'll do for now, I guess. All right, we're coming down the home stretch here. We've got our seat cushions installed, we got gauges installed, we completely serviced the starting engine and the main diesel engine. You know what time it is? Turbo time! If only I had an overhead crane. Well, Area Diesel Service sent us over brand new gaskets and O-rings for this turbo assembly, so we're going to get all those installed when we bolt this thing down. Oh man, this thing's heavy. So where the turbo meets the exhaust flange, we have a head gasket looking type of gasket here. You know, it's like that aluminumized, it's like that kind of an aluminum gasket kind of deal. But on the intake side here, we have a double O-ring seal, and to make that go together easier, I usually stick some motor assembly lube on it. This is looper plate number 105. That stuff lubes up those O-rings really good and lets her slide together real easy. Should be able to work it in from there. There we go. All right, as you'll recall, earlier in the video when we removed the turbo, we had to torch off those bolts, so I don't have any to put back in there. Luckily enough, thanks to boltsandnuts.com, we got this awesome hardware assortment in here, and I can just come over here and grab what I need. Decided to go ahead and use all new hardware on this turbo setup since she looks so good. I want to keep her looking snazzy. Like I said before, you guys really should go check out the video Area Diesel Service put together on repairing this thing for me. I think it was a pretty hard-fought endeavor. This bolt's putting up a good fight, though. Arrgh! This is one of those scenarios when you pretty much have to have like a 3-degree swinging ratchet. I'm getting like 2 clicks out of this thing every time. It is tight getting this return line bolted up here on this turbo. Alright, I got the turbo completely mounted and everything cranked down on there. That thing should be ready to fire up. I also picked up this air cleaner for the pony engine. I was missing that part before. That's why the paint's different. I picked that up from a equipment salvage yard, slapped that on there, so we're not going to be sucking any dirt into that nice fresh pony engine. So we're coming close to firing this thing back up, and I cannot wait to sink that blade into the dirt for the first time. But we do have a little bit more work to do before I can fire it up. I want to go ahead and service the transmission. I pulled the dipstick last time I pulled it in here, and the transmission appears to be very low on fluid. And while we're draining the transmission, I'm also going to go ahead and do the fuel filters for the engine, since Lord only knows the last time those things were changed. Well, that one come out pretty easy. The one on the 977, I had to use a hydraulic jack to break loose. I think this thing holds like 42 gallons, but I think it's also pretty low. It looks like it was dripping out of this plug, so we might have to put some thread sealer in this thing when we stick it back in. Here we go. Oh boy. Well, there we go. This pan holds 28 gallons, and we're not quite full to the top. We got another 1.5 inches, 2 inches to go, so that's definitely pretty low on fluid. Well, I just pulled the second drain plug there, and I thought I had turned you guys on, but I think the battery died. Anyways, this is just like a secondary compartment that you have to drain in the transmission. And this one has a magnetic plug on it. And as you can see, we've got some metallic debris here, but really not too bad at all, considering the size of the machine and considering what the one in my 977 looked like when I pulled it out. This isn't bad at all. The one in the 977 was piled up, had actual gear teeth on it and everything, and that transmission still runs and works perfectly. So not too worried about this. I'll clean the plug off, and we'll go ahead and put the plugs back in and check the top side filters and screens, clean and change those out, and then we're going to start dumping fluid in it. Alright, so we have, I don't remember which one's which. One of these is a magnetic strainer for the transmission. The other one is a element that we replace. So let's clean these covers off and yank them off there and see what treasures await us. So it looks like this side is just our element. Not sure why this housing didn't drain out though. I thought that this would naturally drain back to the case. I'd like to empty this somehow, but I'm not sure how. Well, I looked all around on this machine and I cannot find a way to drain out that filter housing. So I'm sure there probably is one, but I can't see it. So the amount of fluid that is in there really doesn't amount to much in the scheme of how much oil goes into this transmission. So we're just not going to worry about it. So with that one being the paper element that we just did, this one ought to be the metal strainer. Ruh-roh. Well, here's another filter that I didn't know we had. Not cool. I have to order another one of these now. The good news is I don't see any dirt on it, which is, I mean, granted you can't see much, but it looks clean. Alright, I found our metal strainer down here. This should essentially be a metal filter with a ring of magnets on it. Alright, really not bad at all. If you guys go way back on the channel and you watch the video of me reviving the 977K that I have, the magnetic filter on it, as well as the drain plugs down below, were horrendous. In fact, there was so much metal in this filter, it was basically clogged, and it blew this seam apart right here because it had so much pressure that it blew that thing apart and was allowing metal to bypass. So that little bit of metal that's on that strainer doesn't concern me at all. We'll get that cleaned off and reinstalled. Okay, we got our magnetic strainer all cleaned up here. Those magnets are quite a pain to get clean. You'll never get every little teeny strand of metal. There's basically all those metal shavings kind of turn into like a ferro fluid on those magnets. They're a real pain sometimes. Dug through my hoard of filters and actually found that I had another one of these filters sitting on the shelf, so what a day to win. Now with all the transmission filters changed, it's time to add new fluid. And the way we have to do that is through that plug right there. All right, we're gonna do this the easy way, I hope. Oh yeah, we're pumping now. The only thing bad about this is that I don't have any kind of way to know how much we're pumping. Well, the old drum pump's working out pretty good now. I have probably about 2/3 of the oil in the transmission, but it's to the point now where I need to fire up the engine because you have to check the transmission while it's running as well. So, without further ado, we're gonna get this baby fired up. I'm excited. I can't wait to hear this thing with a freshly rebuilt turbo. Thank you, Area Diesel Service. Are you guys ready? Contact. what a beast. I love this thing. Look at, boys, not even smoking. Got good oil pressure at low idle. Sounds nice and smooth, no turbo grinding noises. Oh man. So I did pull the dipstick on the transmission already, and it looks like we're about 6 gallons low in the transmission still, and then maybe a gallon or so low in the engine. So we're gonna top both of these off, and then almost ready to run. Well, I mean, it sounds great. It runs good. It seems like, and the oil pressure is great at idle, but not so great up high. And that's got me kind of worried. All right, let's get these fuel filters changed out. Here's our 2 fuel filters. Look like some Napa Gold 3181s. Hard to see much of the element, being that they're surrounded in a steel casing, but what I can see doesn't look bad. So those are the secondary filters. There is a primary filter down here on the side of the block we're going to get as well. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, once more, it is time for you to make fun of me for using a crescent wrench. And I don't care. We're not torquing down a cylinder head. We're loosening a bolt that holds a filter. I have the line blocked. Ooh. Yeah. That can definitely cause some fuel pressure issues. That's nasty. This is like a reusable, washable mesh screen here. It's like a pre-filter. And as you can see, it was doing some work. We'll get this thing cleaned out and reinstalled. All cleaned up. Let's get it installed. Well, it's just about ready to pull out of the shop here. Engine is completely serviced, transmission is completely serviced. We just need to tighten up the track on the other side. This one looks pretty good. I'm going to work it for a little bit and keep an eye on it. We might need to put a little bit more in that one. But the other side's pretty loose here. See how we got that little wave going to it? I believe that's where the original Caterpillar logo came from, and the reason they said it looked like a caterpillar because the tracks did that. But anyway, we'll throw some grease in this tensioner and hopefully they come around for us. Well, I'm really striking out today. We must have used up all of our good luck on previous revivals. This thing's starting to kick my butt. The track jumped at first and started tightening away and was looking great, and then it just abruptly quit. And I've probably pumped the equivalent of 5 tubes of grease into it since then, and she quit moving. affirmatively. I put a mark on the idler, because that's actually what slides forward, is the idler will slide forward. I put a mark on there and cranked and cranked and cranked and nothing. So yeah, I can't see it coming out anywhere. You know, usually if the tensioner's blown out, it's a seal down there near the grease fitting, and you'll be able to see it push grease outside, and I can't see any grease coming out anywhere. Oh boy, I'm excited. There are still some things that we need to worry about on this machine, but she is good enough to go ahead and fire up, walk it out of the shop, and go sink the blade in the ground. Well, first we got to put the blade on, but that shouldn't be a big deal. So this track is tight enough to run it. It is definitely loose, but should be able to run it. If the seal is blown out, which I'm suspecting it has to be somewhere and I'm not seeing it, as we work it, there's a good chance that the track is going to become even looser, so we're going to have to keep an eye on that. If it gets too loose, we'll have to stop. As for the low oil pressure that I'm concerned about, well, it just is what it is. I put a real gauge on it, and it's not terrible. I can't find any specs in the book as far as actual PSI, but according to what I found on some forums and people that sound more knowledgeable than me, they're saying 30 PSI is what it should be at high idle, and we're like 29 PSI, so that's not terrible. I think we could run it for a while, and since we put detergented oil in there now, who knows what the old stuff was, but detergented oil has detergent in there to try to clean out sludge from the engine. So as we run it, there is a small chance, very small, that it will clean out some dirt somewhere, maybe on a pickup screen or something, or an orifice, and we will jump up on our pressure as we run this thing. That is unlikely, but a guy can dream, can't he? I have a new air filter sitting over there in a box for this machine, but I don't want to put it on yet until we have the rest of our air cleaner assembly. I grabbed from the salvage yard what I thought was the proper base unit to that air cleaner, but I don't. So, but I was wrong. It's the wrong assembly. So still looking for one of those things. I should be able to get one pretty easily. Just got to make another trip up to the salvage yard. We do still have filtration, even though the air isn't on there. It's a paper element in there, and the paper element is seated and won't allow anything to bypass. So we are still sucking in filtered air, which is good, but this intake horn doesn't do anything right now. It's kind of all sucking in from the bottom. I'm going to look around, see if I have any kind of exhaust pipe to put on this thing. If not, we'll have to get one of those made up. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think she's ready to send it. The last thing that I didn't cover with you guys is the final drives. I didn't change the oil in them. Some of you guys will grumble about that, but there's 9 gallons in each final drive, and that's a good chunk of change. I did pull the plugs, as you can see all the witness oil there. I pulled the top plugs, and it was full right to the top on both of them. In fact, even slightly over full. That's why it ran out. But the oil looked clean, didn't look like it was contaminated at all. I even cracked the drain plugs down in the bottoms of the final drive housings there and checked for water, and I let a few drops come out and no water in either side. So feeling pretty good about that. I'm just going to let that go for now. There are filter elements up in here. You pop those covers off, and there's a filter on each final drive. So I'm going to run this thing for a little bit and make sure we get that oil all churned up nice and good, because the most I've moved this machine since I've had it is just bringing it down my driveway. So we're going to do some pushing with this thing, hopefully, and after the oil has been circulated really good, I have the filters. We'll go ahead and change out those filters. But anyways, guys, I guess that's about it. Let's fire this thing up and walk it out of here. All right, you guys ready? Contact. I hope you guys heard that. She's not happy. It was running great and it was pushing great. And I was pretty happy about it. I jumped off to reposition the camera, and when I tried to go again, she's not happy. Sounded to me like it was running out of fuel. It is almost a full tank. I just filled it up before I started pushing, so it's not a fuel tank issue. Maybe we have a clogged line or another clogged filter. I couldn't see the bottom of that tank to try and verify that it was cleaned out or anything, so we could have debris in there clogging up the line. I don't know, we're gonna have to work through that. But I'm losing daylight here though, and I still have to go home and edit this video and put it together for you guys to see. So I hate to leave you on a literal cliffhanger, but I think that's where we're at today. I don't think it's gonna take too much to get the old girl fired back up and running again, but it's gonna take a little bit. Everything seems to be running and performing great though. The track, while is still loose, is not crazy loose, so we can still operate it at this point. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and go get my other dozer with the winch on it and try to get this thing pulled up out of here so I can actually work on it on the flat, not on the side of this hill. Cameras never do hillsides justice. This is pretty steep here, so not a fun place to be working on the dozer. Well, what a way to end the video, guys. I am almost home and gonna have to go in the house and start putting this thing together for you. But I just wanted to remind you guys that the National Pike Steam Show that I always attend is coming up here next weekend. I will leave a link to their website with all the details down in the description. And I'll be there all weekend. So if you guys want to come out, and I'm sure you'll bump into me. And don't be afraid to come up and say hey, and you'll get to hopefully see the D8. I'm hoping that there's still time I can get the kinks worked out of the old girl, and we're going to be able to get it up to the show in time. So we'll have that there, and probably the Jeep CJ5 as well. So if you guys are able, I'd love to see you guys out at the show. And also, we have new hats available over at the merch store, dieselcreek.com. We've got some awesome new hats. This one has the 977 on it, and it's got the American flag backing on it. So if you guys are interested in those, they are over at the store, dieselcreek.com. Other than that, that's all I got. So as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you on the next one.